This is Real Estate Rookie episode 281.
In the world of real estate, 10K here, 10K there, it doesn't seem like all that much. But for a person just starting out on their first deal, I just couldn't think. I was just like, how long does it take me to sell 10K worth of sneakers? I got a phone call from my wholesaler. It's a house that has 3 units. So 3 units that could potentially rent out separately. I'm renting it for $3,100 because they're going to take all 3 units. My cash flow on it is going to be about $1,200 a month.
My name is Ashley Kerr, and I'm here with my co-host, Tony Robinson.
And welcome to the Real Estate Rookie Podcast, where every week, twice a week, we bring you the inspiration, motivation, and stories you need to hear to kickstart your investing journey. And we've had a string of just like amazing guests recently. Ashley and Michael, our guest today, is no exception. He's a pastor by trade, and he read the little purple Bible, and he said that made him angry, and that's kind of what motivated him to take action as a real estate investor. And we just kind of hear his story of almost going down a really bad path with his first deal, and kind of having this awakening, and then getting a home run of a deal under contract in its place.
Yeah, if you ever wondered what would happen if you go and get a property under contract, and then all of a sudden you get cold feet or something happens where it's not going to work out anymore, what do you do? And what are some of the consequences of that? And Michael talks through that scenario because it happened to him, and he had to come down to a decision as to how much money he actually wanted to lose. And was there some opportunity cost there? What was the best way to kind of approach that situation? Then he explains what helped him get back onto his feet and what made him angry and almost jealous that got him to take actions on that very first deal that he did end up getting.
Yeah, you guys are going to love today's episode. But before we kick it over to Michael, we've got a review that I want to shout out from someone by the username of KCKS. And Casey says, amazing podcast. I've learned so much. I listen to you guys every morning. Thank you for the information and the education. Keep up the good work. And thank you for the recommendation about local meetups. In 2023, I decided to invest my money with one of the local investors, and we were planning to go out of state next and buy more properties together. So Casey, congrats to you. And for all of our rookies that are listening, if you haven't yet, please do take the 73 seconds it takes to open up your phone, leave us an honest rating and review. The more views we get, the more folks we can reach, and the more folks we can reach, the more folks we can help.
And I also want to say thank you to everyone who's left my book, Real Estate Rookie, 90 Days to Your First Investment, has left a review for that, either on the Bigger Pockets bookstore or in Amazon. I greatly appreciate it so much. We just finished our launch period, and super excited with everyone that has purchased the book. And I really appreciate it. And the stories are starting to come out of people who are taking action. So thank you guys so much. And if you have found that the book has given you value, please leave a review on Amazon or the Bigger Pockets bookstore.
Awesome, Michael. Well, brother, welcome to the podcast, man. We're excited to have you on and kind of dive into your story. So why don't you just kind of give us the quick backstory on kind of who you are and how you got started in the world of real estate investing?
Sure. So I am I guess you can say a retired pastor now. Cause my previous job before getting into real estate was I used to be a pastor in a church, specifically an emotional health pastor. A lot of things happened, pandemic and all of that stuff. And what happened with the pandemic was, what most people don't know is that, churches in general took a really, really big hit in terms of their, congregations. Most churches lost anywhere between 30 to 100% of their congregations over the pandemic. And so, when, my wife and I relocated here to Orlando, the job market was just nil. I just couldn't find a job. And so I started looking I actually studied like some Google online project management thing and tried to find like a career that way. And, turns out that I am too old in a young world. Most of the project managers that are coming in entry levels are in their like 21, 22 years old, things like that. And, I just couldn't find work. And, it was right around that time I started, reading Kiyosaki's book, of course, and it was just mind blowing for me. Just like I came away from that book feeling angry, just really upset, because I feel like, we've been fed this lie our entire life where we have to like get our 9 to 5, go to school, do all of that stuff. And I think it was the first time, and, I took loans out for school and all of that stuff. And I came to the conclusion that I had been duped, and I hated that.
Michael, we've had so many people on the podcast talk about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but I don't think any of them have ever phrased their interpretation of that book in the way that it made them upset. But I do think it's such an interesting take on it, because I think that anger is probably more fueling and can kind of incite action in a way that, being motivated or inspired from the book probably wouldn't do by itself. But anger is a strong motivating factor in so many ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it was. Around the same time, my wife started. Up until this point, ministry doesn't exactly. It's not really a cash cow in terms of that. Let's just put it that way, right? But it was something that I loved doing. I loved taking care of people. I love helping people with their problems and all of that. But, and my wife up to this point has been the breadwinner of our family and kind of supporting us and allowing me to kind of work the job of my dreams, in a sense.
Tell me about that dynamic. So what were your personal finances like before you got into real estate? So were you really great at budgeting because you had lived off, a low income? Did you live below your means, or did you feel like you were always struggling and you were actually bad with your finances? Kind of give us that picture.
Thankfully, we were not your prototypical pastoral family story. I know a lot of pastoral families, they live kind of, below standard and all of that stuff. But thankfully, my wife made enough to really support us to have like a relatively comfortable lifestyle. And so, that really wasn't an issue for us per se. Like it wasn't like we were going out and, just blowing cash left and right. We still had to live, within a certain budget and whatnot. But, we were okay in that regard. But I do know that, I have lots of friends of mine who, are that prototypical, stereotypical pastoral story where, they're working 60 hours a week and making $45K a year, and, things like that. So
what made you, if things were okay for you, things were going good, what made you want to get into real estate? So you had mentioned, not a lot of people were going to church. Did that kind of impact your income? And then it got to the point where you're like, okay, I can't afford to do this anymore. What was like that actual reasoning as to why you decided there's got to be something else out there?
Well, so after we moved down here to Orlando, my wife unfortunately started developing some minor health complications. And, it wasn't anything major. It wasn't anything, life threatening or anything like that. But, it was a little bit concerning because I know that, she's been working hard for us for the last 10, 12 years, and I really do think that it's, taken its toll. I mean, she's been remote, before it was cool. Right. So she's been remote for 12 years or so. And actually, what a lot of people don't know is that actually takes a toll on your body. Just from sitting, day in, day out, sitting at a computer screen day in and day out. I mean, it sounds really amazing from the surface, but there are some consequences to it. And we're just starting to see some of those, issues. And so, I talked about it with her and such, and came to the conclusion that maybe not at this stage of our life where I think the job that I love doing has to take a back seat, and I need to make some cash and need to really take over the brunt of the breadwinning as quickly as I possibly can, and so that kind of coincided with Kiyosaki's book and bigger pockets and all of that stuff. And so it was just like this one big, perfect storm.
Well, Michael, thank you for being so open and honest and sharing that with us, because I think there's people that are going to be able to relate to that, but also people who don't want to get into the situation where that does happen and they're not prepared with some kind of backup plan or whatever that may be. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, so now that you've had that moment, Michael, what's next? So you're ready to take action. What is that action? What are the first things you do to actually become a real estate investor?
I think one of the first things that you need to do post education and you've decided to take that action is to take that scary first step, right? And one of the first steps that I took was, and this is actually another part of the story. So while I was doing pastoral work, I have this side hobby that kind of turned into a business. And I was flipping sneakers, and you know, it was something I started like 5-6 years ago, and you know, started with $500, bought a couple of sneakers, resold them, and you know, I made a pretty decent amount of money considering, you know, that I was doing it only part time and putting very little effort into it. And so one of the first things that I did was I took all that money from sneakers and put it into an account and said, I'm not touching this. This is just for real estate. And probably the biggest step that I took with that money was spending an ungodly amount of money to sign up for a mastermind course, right? And from this woman on YouTube that I was following, and you know, I got so much content from her. She was local, she was great, and all of that stuff. But I actually made a very big mistake there, because I paid a lot of money for the course, and it turns out that she was kind of a dud, and I felt a little duped. I mean, it's not like I didn't learn anything, but I didn't learn what I wanted to learn.
Yeah, so I definitely want to talk a little bit more about your experience and getting duped. But before I go to that, you said something I want to go back to. You said there was the post education, and then you knew you were ready to take that first scary step. But I think that's where a lot of new investors get kind of stuck, Michael, is that they can't determine when does that education stop and when should the action start. So what was the moment for you where you said, okay, my education is done, now it's time for me to take action?
The moment for me, that's a good question. I don't think that there was a moment. Like, I think after the initial reading of Kiyosaki's book, I had already made the decision. All right, I'm changing my life, you know, and, like it's not about what it's going to cost me, you know, but it's about the potential gain. You know, we in the church, we talk a lot about scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset. And 95% of us live in scarcity mindset. What if I lose this? What if I spend this and I don't get it back and whatnot? But the question we should really be asking is, what if it works out? You know, what am I going to do then? You know? And so, so after I buzzed that by my wife and she was on board, I bought the course, but also, I took the step of putting a HELOC on our house and, on our primary resident, which was scary. I'll be honest with you. Even though no money was actually coming out, just taking the steps of filling it out and doing the HELOC was like, oh my God, this is real.
So let's talk a little bit about getting your wife on board. Was she always on board with this? When you're like, I want to leverage our primary, was everything okay? Or were there some deep conversations? Just give us a little insight to that, please.
Yeah. My wife is wonderful, right? And she's generally very supportive of my crazy ideas. Um, she was supportive of my sneaker idea. She was supportive of the idea of me going into the church and doing ministry and whatnot. Now, I've never presented anything to her of this magnitude. So it took a few more days for her to get on board, but generally she was very open to it. She had heard people being successful in the field, so she knows that it's not a complete dud of an idea. I'll be honest with you, I inceptioned her a little bit. So whenever we were in the car, it would just so happen that Bigger Pockets would be on,
I mean, a great idea, right? Like just, planting those little tiny seeds.
Yeah. So
how much convincing did it take, Michael, for her to be okay with the HELOC? Because that like you said, it's a big step, right? And was she immediately on board? Because it's okay to say, honey, go invest in real estate. It's another to say, hey, I want to use the equity from our home where we live, or where we keep a roof over our heads to actually do this. So what did that conversation look like?
I think she was a lot more okay with the fact that we're not actually taking money out of the equity. Like it's, I know how a HELOC works. I know it's a line of credit and all of that stuff, but there's nothing physically being withdrawn out of the house itself. So conceptually, that kind of made her feel a little bit more at ease. And so that was helpful. I think it would have been different if I had proposed a cash out refi. I think that would have gone very differently.
With that line of credit, what made you decide to do that HELOC? Was that just you looked at everything and that was your only options instead of putting 20% down? Why did you actually decide to do the line of credit, or was it from the coaching that you were receiving at the time?
No, neither. Again, just going back to the concept of the HELOC, where you're not actually taking anything out, was very attractive to me. Even though the interest rate is higher, all of that stuff, I just liked the idea of money not leaving, home base.
Yeah, I guess just really quickly, Michael, if you can explain the difference to our rookie audience between a cash out refi and a HELOC, and if you can explain like the terms of the HELOC, like what kind of interest rate you were given, how long you had to pay that HELOC back, and just kind of break it down for the listeners.
Sure. So a cash out refi versus a HELOC are two very different things. So a HELOC is home equity line of credit, which is basically, in a nutshell, in simplistic terms, is like a credit card that uses your house as collateral. All right, we are entrusting you with X amount of money, and as long as you continue to make your payments and pay it back and whatnot, every time you make a payment, you get back X amount of credit. So just like in a credit card, right? So that's in a nutshell what a HELOC is. While a home equity line of credit, in a cash out refi, you're going to the bank and saying, all right, I paid $200K for my home and now it's worth $400K. All right. So bank, I want you to give me $200,000 in cash and you give me a new loan at $400K. And so you take out so you get to do whatever you need to do with the $200K. But now your monthly payment is significantly higher. Your interest rate is significantly higher and your home no longer has the equity in it.
Yeah, I think, in the last couple of years, or excluding the last year or so, but 2020, 2021, where interest rates were still historically low, you actually saw a lot of people doing the cash out refi versus the HELOC because they could cash out refi, access more capital, and a lot of people were actually able to keep their payments the same, or maybe even bring them down, because if they had their original note at a 5% and they're refining at a 2.75, they could actually pull all that capital out and be in a better position. But I think where we're at today with interest rates, you're probably going to see less cash out refis, because who wants to refi from a 3% up to a 5.5 or a 6 or a 7? Ash, have you done any lines of credit recently on any of your properties?
No, but the lines of credits that I do have increased in interest rates since they're variable. So I went from one was a 5% interest rate and it's now at 8.75. And then the other one started out at a 6%. And that one's now at like 9.5, I think it last was. So the interest rates on my line of credits have greatly increased. One thing that I am working on right now is doing doing a cash out refinance, a property I bought in cash that I'm doing a cash out refinance. And I'm actually doing a 7-year fixed rate. And then it will go to variable after 7 years, but it's still amortized over 30 years. So I'm getting a better interest rate because it's only fixed for 7 years instead of the standard 30, 20, 15 years. And then, my plan is that I just have to prepare myself what interest rates are going to be after that 7th year, so that I can, refinance, I can pay it off, but make sure I have some kind of action plan. But right now I'm getting 5.125% on this property for the interest rate for 7 years. And if I would have done a 30-year fixed rate, it would have been, I think, like 6.75 on it, the property. So a big difference there, but also, risky. Who knows what interest rates will be in 7 years too. So hopefully my plan would be like, I have a backup plan to just pay it off if that does happen. So I wouldn't do this on every property. So if I'm buying 10 properties this year, I'm not going to go and put these 7-year fixed mortgages on them, because all of a sudden I'm in year 7 and now I have 10 properties that the interest rates are doubling or going up, or I have to refinance all of them. So that's something very important to think about too. If you are doing these shorter term fixed rates, that you're staggering them so you don't have all of these loans due at the same time or need to refinance at the same time too.
Michael, so once you go out and get this HELOC, how much capital do you have access to, and then what do you do to deploy that capital?
Well, so the plan with the HELOC was, I figured I wanted to flip a house. I just, it's my first foray into real estate. It seems like, outside of wholesaling, flipping a house seems the most straightforward. You put money into it and you sell it at a higher price. It's very much like flipping a sneaker, right? And so that was kind of the plan, and hence the reason why with the HELOC, because the HELOC, I know that I was getting a much, much higher interest rate than your normal stuff. And so I figured, if I'm flipping a house within 2 to 3 months, it's okay because I'm paying back the HELOC after 3 months, and just that was the original plan. Didn't work out that way.
I was going to say, you said original plan. Makes me think there's something else that went on.
Yeah. So the original plan was to go and do the flip, but it turned out that I bought a buy and hold instead, and instead of using the HELOC, I dipped into my sneaker money to make your down payment and to buy my first rental property.
Okay. So let's go into that. You bought a flip, but it ends up being a buy and hold. What does that mean? How did that property transition?
Well, so they're actually they're two different properties, and I feel like maybe I'll start with the success first, and then I'll tell you about the failure.
Which was the first property that you bought, or you bought them at the same time?
So no. So my very first contract that I went under was actually I was going to flip it, right? And it was an ideal situation, right? My realtor sent me this listing where the house was in a beautiful location. It was distressed. It had a hoarder in there, and but there were very few pictures on the on the MLS. It was, and the price was very, very low. And so I went over to go take a look at it, just to drive by and see. And there was this woman outside who was just walking around, and she was asking me, "Are you here to see the property?" And I was like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" She's like, "You just had that look about you, right?" And And then she said, well, you can't go in there. I was like, why not? It's like, because the person in there is, is not leaving. And part of the reason why it's priced so low is because they're not leaving and you'd be inheriting that problem. Right. And so I was like, in the new mastermind that I got into, they were like, those are the situations you look for. Those are the situations you look for because you can get a really good deal on those kinds of things. So I was like, oh, sweet. Right. And it also turned out that she lived in the house next door and her house was for sale as well. And it turns out that she owned both the houses. So I was like, hey, can you give me a discount if I take them both? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, we built that beautiful rapport. I went inside her house and it turned out that she was just like a giant Star Wars nerd. Right. And I'm also a Star Wars nerd, and she showed me like she had like memorabilia from like the original movie. She put C-3PO's finger on me and stuff, and it's like the original finger. And we geeked out for about 45 minutes. And so I went in there with my contractor, and we both looked at it and stuff like that. And it looked like it needed about, $50K worth of work. There's, it was distressed, but it didn't look like it needed that much work.
And Michael, how did you get to know that? Like going in there and eyeballing it, why did you feel comfortable that you could kind of gauge what the rehab costs would be?
I went in there with my contractor.
Yeah, let's pause on that just really quickly, Michael. How did you find that contractor? Because I think as a new investor, that's one of the sticking points always is how do I find someone reliable to give me a bid? And did you pay this person to walk the property with you? Just walk us through how you found them and why they agreed to give you that bid.
Sure. So my contractor, so when I first came here to Orlando, one of the first things I started looking for is a church job, right? And so, the first thing I did was I emailed every pastor, at every church, within like a 5 to 10 mile radius, and, I met this one guy who happened to be from Maryland, and we had a great conversation and stuff. And it turned out that, on the side, because ministry doesn't pay well, he was a GC. He's a general contractor, right? And so, fast forward, I called him up and said, hey, I'll be honest with you. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. But you do. Do you mind if we start, working together? He was like, yeah, absolutely. And so we have that tie, that bond of both of us being pastors and stuff. Shout out to you, Josh. I know you're listening. So, but yeah, I mean, if the listeners, could learn anything about that, like you just never know who's a contractor. You just never know who does house stuff. Ask around. Networking is number one. Like if you want to find a good GC somewhere, like touch all your friends, touch all your family members. You just never know, who is going to be able to do good work for you. Because once you have an existing relationship, an existing tie, the likelihood of them being able to do good work for you at a reasonable price goes up exponentially. You're not shooting in the dark.
Ash and I talk about this all the time is like, even if you're a new or aspiring investor, you should be talking about your aspirations and you should be talking about this journey that you're going on. And even if that's as simple as taking a photo of the book that you're reading and posting that to your Facebook or to your Instagram, or a video of you at the local real estate meetup and posting that to your TikTok or to your YouTube channel. But as you share more about this journey that you're going on, you start to identify all of the people who are in your network and your extended network that, just like you said, Michael, you never would have imagined had an interest in real estate, but they do, and they are, and they're active, or they know someone else. And that's how you start to build those connections. So you find this contractor through your pastoral connections, and he walks a property with you. You land on $50K. So what happens from there?
Now, I knew that there was a lot of competition for these two properties, right? There was the people who were walking through at the same time that I was walking through and stuff. There was probably 8 or 9 people, and they were all obviously investors because they were dressed like investors. You know what I mean? And so my realtor, she advised me like, hey, we need to go in pretty aggressive with this. So, what I chose to do, everybody knows that last year, the year before, real estate was crazy and you had to do some crazy stuff to secure, right? Florida is still hot. And so there's still a lot of competition here. And so I went in, I felt pretty confident about my numbers. And so I went in with an offer that was a little bit lower than everybody else's offer, but I waived all my contingencies. And that turned out to be, a hard lesson. I still feel like I won because I got a really great education.
Look at you, so positive.
I mean, I'm trying to be, man, because
yeah, no, that's great. Like it was an opportunity cost to you. So explain what that cost ended up being as to what did you learn and what came out of the contingencies. So I'm saying by waiving contingencies, you didn't do the inspection. Was there any other kind of contingency you waived, like no survey or anything like that?
No, nothing like that. It was just no inspection.
And Michael, if I can just add before you go on, just the reason why the no contingency for our listeners is such a big deal is because typically when you have a purchase agreement for a piece of real estate, you have what's called the contingency in your contract, which means if you identify something during, whatever time period, sometimes it's 14 days, sometimes it's 21 days, sometimes it's 30 days. But if you identify something that is, a material change from what you initially understood the property to be. So maybe there's a major defect with the plumbing or the electrical or just some big thing that you didn't understand before, you now have the right as the buyer to take back what any earnest money that you put down, and you can walk away from that contract, clean and scot-free. So what Michael did was, hey, I'm not going to do any of those inspections, and I'm going to commit on day one to purchasing that property. And obviously there's some risks in front of that. What are your thoughts on that, Ash?
Well, Tony, I was going to ask you, what are you doing right now when you're making offers? Are you putting any contingencies in?
Now I am, because the market has shifted, right? I think last year was a little harder to do that, but now we're like, even if there's nothing wrong with the house, most offers that we're putting in, we're still asking for some kind of credit because, that's kind of where the market is at right now. We know there's not a lot of competition for these properties. So I shared on one of our other episodes, we were able to negotiate like almost $100K off of an asking price for a property that we're working on right now. So, I mean, are you doing that right now too, Ash?
Well, yeah, I was doing no contingencies because a lot of the properties I was buying anyways were just so dilapidated that, an inspection's really not going to tell me anything more than I already don't know.
Hey, you need to fix everything.
And, I don't need the inspector's note saying this outlet should be, the outlet cover is cracked and needs to be replaced. Like the whole wall is falling down. But I actually just did an offer this morning where, and for the first time in a long time, I put in an inspection contingency that I was going to have an inspection done on the property because I agree, like the market has shifted and that there is more like wiggle room to allow for a contingency. So Michael, when did you put this offer in where you ended up waiving contingencies? What time period is this?
So this happened December of this last year. I put the earnest money down and we, after all of that had happened, there was some probate stuff that ended up delaying the closing a couple of months. And this wound is actually kind of very recent and still a little bit raw, I'll be honest with you, because we finally finished up with it actually in February. And what had happened was we went in there. My contractor and I were doing some walkthroughs, and we went in there to kind of start planning out what the rehab was going to look like and stuff. And the rehab was not $50,000. There was a lot of stuff that the sellers were hiding. It's not $50,000 per house anymore. It is $180,000 per house.
Per a house? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so, I went back to the seller and I was just like, we can't buy your house. This is insane. Like how much Like it was, I mean, the things that were wrong with this house were just stuff that they hid. And, there was septic tank issues. There was animals living in the roof, in the ceiling. It's like everything that you can think of that needed to be done.
Michael, I just want to ask, so once you discovered those additional issues, after you closed on the property, or was it still during like the escrow period?
It was still during the escrow period.
So how much earnest money did you have to put down to secure that contract?
$10,000 per house.
Got it. So $20,000 total in earnest money deposit. Did you at any point consider just walking away, like leaving the $20K in there and not doing the rehab? Or I guess how did you weigh those decisions, I guess?
So when I tried to go back to the seller and at least try to negotiate that down a little bit, she was just like, no, I have 15 other offers on the table and I accepted yours. We're doing this. And I was like, I can't, like, if I were to do this, like, I would be paying in more than the ARV is. And so my realtor actually did a really great job. She and the other real estate agent just kind of went back and forth, and I didn't lose 20K. I lost 10. So we decided to split it evenly, which I'll be honest with you, I feel fortunate to even come away with the 10.
Got it. So you did walk away from the deal altogether. You said, hey, I'm not going to move forward with it. Okay. And I think that's a really important point, because it, like for a lot of our rookies, sometimes it is cheaper to just lose your EMD than it is to move forward with the deal. Because I mean, if you're talking 50K per house to 180 per house, that's a massive difference. And you would have lost way more than 10,000 had you moved forward with the deal. So even for our rookies that are listening, I think the point I want to get across is, sometimes losing your EMD is the smartest choice. And I think you represented that exceptionally well here, Michael.
I've actually done that before. It was $2,500 and we had to walk away for the deal. It would have been way too expensive and just didn't work out. And we ended up walking away and leaving the $2,500. And I felt so bad that we were walking away from the deal, like on to the sellers, that we had a contract and everything, and that we were walking away from it, that I didn't feel bad about that $2,500. I actually felt bad that I wasn't giving them more money for walking away from the deal. But I agree, it's way better to lose some money now, lose that 10 grand now, than to lose 100,000, later on.
Yeah, we had a similar experience. We had a property actually in New York, Ash, that bed and breakfast we were looking at, and we lost 5K on that EMD. Because after kind of walking the property and doing everything, we realized there were some issues that we didn't anticipate up front. So it happens to the best of us, Michael. You just got yours a little bit earlier in the game. That's all.
Michael, I have a question real quick. And have the houses sold? And have you checked to see how much they actually sold for?
So apparently they're under contract. So I don't see what the final number is yet until it actually closes.
That'd be interesting to see and kind of follow what happens with the properties, if they sit as is or someone does fix them up. Yeah. Okay. So then what goes on after that? So you ready to take on, try again, take on the next deal. So what's the next deal look like?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Like, I went right after all of that. I took a really, really big blow to my confidence. 'Cause in the world of real estate, 10K here, 10K there, it doesn't seem like all that much, but for a person just starting out on their first deal, I just couldn't think. I was just like, how long does it take me to sell 10K worth of sneakers, right? How long would that to end? And, I spent a good week or so just like contemplating, did I make the right decision? And am I in over my head and whatnot? And, but it was actually in my mastermind group where, so our mastermind group has like this little Band group. Band is like an app where it's like a Facebook group for just certain groups of people. Right. And, there were people that I knew that had joined, later than me, that were getting deals. and they were less experienced than me. They didn't know as much as me, but they were getting deals, right? And I don't know, when I was going through that, like I'm very competitive. And my competitive spirit just kind of flared up, and I got mad at them, right? Because like, why do I have to go through this crappy deal where I lose money and stuff like that? And here are these newbies who have been in the group for, 2 months, and they're getting deals in my area, and so, that's really what got me restarted and started making offers again, and touching all my networks again, and whatnot. And interestingly enough, the very next week, I got a phone call from from one of the wholesalers that I've been talking up, and he was like, "Mike, you need to come see this property. It's a unicorn. You need to come see it like today." So I was like, all right, I'll do it. And so I went over there, and it really was a unicorn property. It's a house that has 3 units. It's got 3 separate units on it. So there's a main house. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. There's a smaller shed thing that you can definitely renovate and rent out and turn it into a little studio. And then they also had a mother-in-law suite. So 3 units that could potentially rent out separately. The asking price, including the assignment fee, was only $240. The ARV on it was $400. And I walked the property with my contractor according to it, just to get it up and running without all the beauty and cosmetics and stuff, was only $15. And so I had a moment of conflict inside me because, I was still traumatized from the previous experience. It's still kind of raw. But against how I was feeling at the moment, like all the numbers lined up in my head. And so I went ahead and put down another $10K for the EMD. That was 3 weeks ago.
Did you have any competition, or you were buying direct from the wholesaler then? Was this deal just brought to you, or was it brought to other buyers that you were in competition, or was it you just got first dibs? If you could pay what they wanted, then you were good. How did that kind of work out? So
there were definitely other buyers, but my wholesaler, he brought it to me first, and he basically said, hey, whoever puts the EMD in my hand first gets it.
Michael, just one follow-up question on that. How did you find that wholesaler?
So one of the first things I did when I arrived in Orlando was I joined every Orlando, Central Florida area Facebook group. And then I crafted together this Facebook post that said, hey, I'm looking for a realtor who's going to be investor friendly. I need them to be able to do, 5, 6, 7 comps for me every single day, blah, 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 blah. Is anybody interested? And I just kind of blasted that out. And I've got within an hour or so, I think I must have gotten 35 emails, with people who were interested. And most of them were wholesalers and whatnot. And, especially at the beginning of your journey, you do have to sift through them and figure out who the good ones are and who are not. But that's how I found my realtor. And that's how I found one of my 3 really great wholesalers, who aren't, charging an enormous assignment fee. And that's kind of how I form my network here.
Michael, let's get it back into the deal as far as the numbers. So you said this was 3 weeks ago. Have you closed on the property, and have you begun the rehab?
Yeah. So closing was 3 weeks ago.
And is the rehab done, or is that still going on?
Rehab should be done sometime next week. And here we go back to relationships. Turns out that my contractor knew another contractor who needed a place to live. And so we locked up that contract. He rented out all 3 units. Him and his family and his newlywed daughter, and her new husband are moving in there into the little mother-in-law suite and stuff. So, it was just like a dream scenario. And I really feel like, I hit a home run with this one.
So what's going to be your cash flow? And well, first of all, what are you going to be renting it out for?
The market rent, if you consider all 3 units, about $3,300. I'm renting it for 3,100 because they're going to take all 3 units. My cash flow on it is going to be about 1,200 a month. That's gross.
Awesome. Congratulations. That's really good. And that's interesting that they're renting all 3 units. We actually had a guest on, Ryan John. I don't remember what episode it is, but someone local to me. And his first duplex that he got was somebody who had a larger family. And they're like, it's really hard to find rentals in the area that are 3 bedrooms. And they needed like 4, I think it was. And so they ended up renting the whole duplex from him. And he did the same thing, I think, too, where he gave them a little bit of a discount because it was just one tenant he had to manage now instead of the 2 separate families living in there, which was more of a convenience for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, Michael, thank you so much for kind of sharing that deal for us. I want to take us now to our rookie request line. So if you guys would like to call in, you can call in at 1-888-5-ROOKIE. Leave Tony and I a voicemail, and we may play it here on the show for our guest to answer.
Hello, my name is Sandra from Corona, California. My question to you is, how much do you think I should have in the bank before I start investing when I am looking at houses within the 200 to 275,000 range? Thank you.
My advice would be don't worry about the money. My advice would be to go and find the deal first. Because in my experience, in my very limited experience, I've come to the conclusion that if you find a good deal, money will fly into your email box. People just throw in money at you, and there are ways to get into the property and to buy a property without putting any of your own money in. And it's actually not as hard as you would think. So, I would say, don't wait till you have money in your bank account. Go and find the deal first.
Yeah. And I think the only thing I would add on to there is having like 3 to 6 months reserves for yourself for the property. But you most likely won't know what that amount is until you have the property as far as what your mortgage payment will be, what your insurance, your property taxes would be. You can kind of guess that on, especially if you know kind of the budget range you're looking at and what property taxes are for properties around that range. But if you take on a partner, they could maybe possibly have the reserves where you don't have to have them. That was my first partner. I had little to no savings. I think maybe I had $5,000 and I ended up using that to put a new electric panel in and to put a new split unit in my first duplex. But other than that, all the reserves, like that was on the partner that I took on to kind of have that security blanket.
I think just one last thing to add to that too, Ash. I think like it also depends on what your strategy is. So like say that, Sandra, you want to house hack. And maybe you want to use the NACA loan. So we just had Nancy Rodriguez from Love is Blind on, and she got her first property using NACA. And NACA allows you to get into a primary residence, whether single family or multifamily, with 0 down or no closing costs. And I know some people that have closed with NACA where they actually get a refund because they got credits from the seller at closing. So imagine you go out, you get a 4 unit, you're living in 1 unit, renting out the other 3. I still think Ashley's point about getting the reserves is super important if you don't have a capital partner there. But Sandra, I think it all depends on kind of what your strategy is and how you plan to use that property.
Okay, Michael, are you ready for the rookie exam?
Let's do it.
Okay. The first question is, what is one actionable thing rookies should do after listening to this episode? The
one actionable thing is that you should go and attend your local real estate meetings. Just go attend every event that they have. I would go and meet as many people as you can. Bring something that resembles a business card, just in a way to get in contact with you, and go and have coffee with a bunch of people.
I love that. All right. Question number 2, Michael. What's one tool, software, app, or system that you use in your business?
I use Privy a lot. Privy is an excellent comp tool that I find to be very accurate, and it's an amazing app where not only do you get the comp numbers and stuff, if there's pictures that are already attached to the comps, you can see the pictures. And so you can kind of figure out like what's the level of rehab you would have to do to get it up to that comp level.
Okay. And the last question is, where do you plan on being in 5 years?
Well, in 5 years, hopefully, I hope that my wife will be able to quit her job and that I'll be just playing with my kids in the middle of the day, you know, and that's where I'm planning on being.
Yeah, I love that goal, Michael. All right, brother. Well, before we close it out, I'm going to take it to the Rookie Rockstar. So this week's Rookie Rockstar is Tim Weston. And Tim says, hey, fellow rookies, excited to share. I just closed on my first long-term rental and I'm about to put it on the market with only a vision back in February to start this journey of rental property investing. I set a goal to have my first property by mid-year and I did it. So I started in March, spending time learning and researching, found and joined Bigger Pockets, and then attended the Rookie Boot Camp. Shout out to you, Ash. From that, I gained the confidence to place offers on multiple properties and landed a 2-bedroom townhouse in a gated community here in Orlando. Here's to door number 1. So Tim, congrats to you on taking action. And Ashley, congrats to you on making some life's change in the Rookie Boot Camp.
You know, we have amazing guest speakers that come on and just the people that join up for the boot camp and take action. I love hearing those success stories. And we actually just decided the other day that we're going to do one over the summer. Originally, we were only going to do 2 sessions this year, but we have a long wait list. So we're doing another summer session. So if you guys want to get involved, go to biggerpockets.com/bootcamps to sign up. Okay. And Michael, we will be seeing you in about 9 months here, maybe a little less, for the Bigger Pockets conference in Orlando. So if you guys want to meet Michael in person, you guys are inspired by his story, want to find out more, you can attend the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Conference that is happening October 15th to 17th. You can go to biggerpockets.com/events for more information. And Michael, if they can't wait until the conference, where can people reach out to you?
They can reach out to me on Instagram at Pastor Mike79. And and I'm just starting to get into that social media game, so it's a little sparse, but I do answer my DMs. So,
okay, awesome. Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining us on this week's Real Estate Rookie Podcast. We really enjoyed having you.
Thank you for having me. I was just so excited to be here.
What a great episode with Michael. I think he's very relatable as to kind of that thought process of if other people are doing this, well, I should be doing it too. Like when he talks about how people in his mastermind group that had just joined were getting deals and he hadn't yet. And it kind of gave him that competitive edge, like, okay, I need to get this done. I think that can be very relatable and also motivate you. So maybe if you're that type of person that use that, don't turn it into anger or take that anger, turn it into, motivation to push yourself to kind of get that done. But overall, I think this was a really great episode.
Yeah. And we've been talking about this for a while, but I love that he was flipping sneakers to help fund his real estate business. Like, I feel like as we've been interviewing a lot of these rookies recently, we've heard so many different side hustles that folks have used to fund. So we had Ava who talked about, they were couch flipping initially, and then she started her social media side hustle. We had the recent guest that was in the vending machine space, and now Michael with the sneakers. So there's so many creative ways to fund your real estate business. So if you're sitting here and you're watching or listening and saying, I don't have the capital, we have a recent string of guests who are all proof there are so many ways to make it happen. And just one other thing that Michael mentioned that I loved was he talked about taking that scary first step. And I think that's such an important thing for all of our rookies, is to identify when it's time to take that scary first step. And that's how you kind of beat that analysis paralysis.
Today's social media shout out that I want to highlight is our guest that we just had on Saturday for our Rookie Reply is Pace Morby. So if you guys missed this past week's Rookie Reply, go back and listen, episode 280. Pace's Instagram is at Pace Morby, his name, but you go through and I couldn't even pick one specific post to actually share on here because it's all such great content. So one that he recently just posted were tips on ways to go direct to seller. Sometimes I think there's a huge advantage in talking to a seller directly to be able to find out the reason why they're selling and to be able to negotiate with them directly. So go give Pace a follow at Pace Morby on Instagram. You can also find me at Wealth from Rentals, and you can find Tony at Tony J. Robinson. If you guys have a side hustle that you are doing, please send us a DM and let us know what that side hustle is. We really want to put together an episode that kind of showcases all of these different side hustles. So that's at Wealth from Rentals or at Tony J. Robinson. Just slide into whoever's DM you like better so we can, we can have a competition.
Or slide into both DMs simultaneously. You can do like a little group chat with all three of us.
Yeah. Okay, you guys, thanks so much for listening, and we will be back with a rookie reply.